Welcome, folks. I had to hit the go live button sooner rather than later because we're just sitting over here laughing and having such a good time. And I want you to be in on it, which is why I live stream these shows. If you don't get to watch the whole show or you missed part of it, listen, I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. So go to bizbookpubhub.com, catch the latest episode, become a subscriber wherever you listen to shows. And without any further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce this week's guest. Today's guest is a recognized leader in the speaking industry and a master at helping experts turn their message into money. For over 2 decades, she's been the go-to consultant for speakers, consultants, and thought leaders who want to book more business, make more money, and build sustainable, profitable brands around their expertise. She's the author of Book More Business, Make More Money Speaking, and co-author of The Speaker Author, Sell More Books and Book More Speeches. And she's worked with clients at every stage, from rising stars to some of the most successful names in the business. Her proven strategies help experts clarify their message, refine their marketing, and unlock high-paying opportunities that align with their strengths. She's been a featured presenter at the National Speakers Association, the Global Speakers Federation, and the Professional Speakers Association UK Ireland, which named her an Honorary Fellow for outstanding contributions to the industry. Please join me welcoming Lois Kramer. Welcome, Lois.
Well, thanks. I was thinking as you were introducing that guest, I'd love to hear this person. This person sounds pretty smart. I wonder who it is.
You know, I would love when we pull together these. I have shout out to Paya Robbins, my assistant, who does a great job writing these intros. And I think, wow, there's things I learned about my guests just from that little deep dive. You are an incredible person in so many ways, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show. You've written multiple books, so we're going to talk about your journey overall. But I know that all of your books have a particular audience in mind. So I'd love to understand kind of who's your ideal reader for your book. Who's the person that would benefit the most from reading it?
I have a very niche business, and so I write for my niche audience. And that includes speakers, professional speakers, consultants, and experts. Those are typically the three that I pulled out. People who are selling a service, and professional speakers, my real sweet spot, speakers and consultants.
Now, I know you from the National Speakers Association, and the message was loud and clear. When I joined in 2015, I needed to start writing that book. I couldn't become a professional speaker without the book. So it was like a drumbeat that I kept hearing. And you've been part of the association a long time, and it's kind of hard to get away from that noise. But you didn't write a book right away. Like, feels like you were doing your thing. You were working with speakers. You're part of the association. What led you to commit to the book process? Obviously the messaging is there, but when did you decide this is a thing I'm going to commit to doing?
Well, it was kind of a process for me. I wanted to live with my material, with my intellectual property for a while before I really started writing. And so what I did before I had a book, I had a notebook, a literal 3-ring binder that I wrote and I sold as a product. And it did pretty well for me. The great thing about that, though, it gave me flexibility. I could refine it. And I constantly did refine it. Then I realized that I really should have a book. And I kept putting it off because I was kind of afraid of it, quite frankly. But I realized that having a book was something that I absolutely needed to do. And so I finally decided, and my tip is don't wait as long as I did, folks. But I finally decided to put this manual, put this manual and a blog that I've been writing for years, combine those two things into a book. And that's what I did finally in 2017.
Just for context, when did you start sharing that ring binder manual?
Probably, well, right away. And let me tell you why. When I started Book More Business, I started because I ran a speaker business for a very successful professional speaker. And I decided when I was thinking about actually starting a business, jumping into this, I sat down at my compact computer, not that I'm dating myself, and I opened Word and I wrote down everything I knew about the speaking business. I know this sounds totally insane. But I thought, if I want to create a business working with professional speakers and consultants, what do I have that would be valuable to them in sales and marketing, which is my real background? And so I just did a data dump into a Word program. I found somebody who helped me edit it, content editing, first of all. And then I just made sections. I had tips lists, I had sheets, I had some digital products included. I put a CD in there. That's really how I started. And I started it right away, not selling it as a product, but including it with when people bought a consulting package as a reminder of everything that we covered.
It makes so much sense. What year is this?
This would have been 1999.
So from 99 to 2016 or so, your business was doing its thing. There wasn't a book per se, but this manual was being updated, edited, developed, right? And here's what I want to say about it. I know that you waited a long time, and that is 17 years is a while to wait.
Yeah.
But it was your content. I have, on the other hand, here's the other extreme. Just happened to me again the other day, where someone said, so I host these like 30-minute brainstorming calls, right? And I said, I don't care if you have a book or, it's published or anywhere between. It's just someone came on who has not yet published a book. And she said in a very, confiding tone, nobody knows I'm working on this. And I said, what? What do you mean no one knows I'm working on it? What does that mean? She said, well, I haven't told anyone. And I said, oh, is it because you don't want to be held accountable to finishing and you're really busy? Like, what's your thing? And I'm thinking like, it's hard as you feel like expectations get higher when people know you're doing something. And for me, that works. For other people,
it works for me too.
Yeah. She said, no, I'm worried someone's going to steal my idea. Oh. I like did everything I could not to laugh. Yeah. Because your idea should already be known. Like, you should be tied to that idea. So by the time your book came, you were tied to that content. Like, it was clearly yours and you had refined it. And so I think sometimes authors rush too soon. I don't want to say authors. It's more that they're the business owner, speaker. Yes. They like barely know their content. They haven't really been booked yet. And they think they have to come up with a book first. But
yes,
you gotta workshop that content a little bit. Yeah.
I think so. And I think that's, I say, don't wait as long as I did, but I do suggest people live with it for a while. Get audience feedback. Hear what people have to say. Hear if there's pushback. Be challenged. But, I also would say this. We're in the intellectual property business, those of us who are speakers, consultants. You have to give it away in order to attract any interest in what you're doing. And so I gave away a lot of these tips lists and sheets and things that I have ultimately published. But that little manual really was the beginning of my seeing I needed to be in the product business. Mm-hmm. After I started including that in packages, I started selling it just as a product. And I sold that sucker for $89, and I did pretty well. I probably made about 85 each time I sold it because I put them together on my dining room table. So it was a good product for me. It served me really well for a number of years.
It's funny because I can hear that you feel like you waited too long to create a published book, yet no one has those kinds of margins as an author.
Well, I was told for years, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And one time when I was challenged on this by someone who got to be a little pushy about it, quite frankly, Robbie, I said, what's your profit margin on your book? He said, I make $12 every time I sell a book. I said, that's great. I make 80. Now, at the time, I'm not saying that this sold like hotcakes, but it was a pretty good little product for me. It was a pretty good little product for me. And from that, all of my writing was born. Really, that's what really started me in the blog business and started me thinking about blogs as longer articles, white papers, and ultimately chapters in a book.
Well, and that's another way to get the ideas out of your head and out into the world and have people respond to it. So committing to a regular writing practice that is publicly available somewhere, like a blog post or a LinkedIn newsletter or Medium, or there's a zillion of these new places that are out there. And then if you have that sense that you know it's going to be a book, then you can write a little more intentionally. So some of us create a lot of content and then, retroactively try to figure out how to turn that into a book. Others of us realize by like the fifth blog post that we're actually writing a book, and then we create the outline, and then we are more intentional about the content we create towards the eventual book, even if the book's 4 years away. Like, we know we're moving in that direction. And it could be difficult though to take all that content and massage
Yes,
it into something that people can consume, because the point about your manual, I'm imagining it covered even more, right?
it did.
Like it was very full and detailed and, from A to Z. So how do you determine that first book? Like what the parameter is going to be for this first book?
Well, that's a good question, because I really did. You described this perfectly. I was at information overload as far as what I was going to write. And so I just had to go through it. And I will tell you that I was in a mastermind group at the time. It was very helpful to me in discerning what would be good content. Also, Kathy Fayok, who is a great book coach, helped me get my first edition to market. It probably would still be. I'd probably still be mulling over it if it weren't for her. She was also helpful to me about what the depth and breadth of this should be without going crazy. Also, I knew that I wanted this to be what I call a briefcase book, Robbie. I didn't want this to be War and Peace, because if it were War and Peace, nobody would buy it, nobody would read it. So I wanted it to be like I could, people put this in your briefcase, you carry it on a plane. It's easy. I wanted it not to be too long. And also, I really knew going in what I wanted the format to look like. I had the great fortune of working for Jack Canfield, who hired me to help him with his speaking practice a number of years ago. And I had bought probably every chicken soup book on the face of the earth. My daughter loved them. I loved them too. And I remember telling him at the time that I'm going to write a book eventually. I'm going to write a book, and I want my chapters to be like chicken soup chapters, very short, crisp, to the point. People can pick up this business book and put it down. And so I kind of had these ideas percolating, if you will, for a while before I wrote it.
First of all, that's like a buried factoid in your history that you had that gig. The fact that you don't lead with it just shows how impressive you are, because you've had many similarly astounding clients that you've got a chance to work with over the years. But what a great influencer in your life.
Oh, listen, he was absolutely terrific. I was very, very lucky. He just happened, the president of his business happened to come to a speech I did at a national NSA meeting, never introduced herself. I came back from the meeting a few days later. I pick up the phone and it's Jack Canfield. And I thought it was somebody punking me, Robbie. But it was actually him. And probably 3 or 4 weeks later, I was out in Santa Barbara. So you just never know in this business.
You never know. That's amazing. So earlier you mentioned Kathy Fayok, and I wanted to shout out that she has a book called Blog to Book. That's the number 2, all one word, blog, number 2, book, repurposing content, discover the book you've already written. And I remember when this book came out, because she came to National Speakers Association conference and was handing out copies.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to get one of those. And I have mentioned it to so many people since. So a couple of things about that is write a book that others want to talk about and that you become known for. And she's also the co-author of the book that you wrote together. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be, because that was back a couple of years later. So your first book comes out in 2017, and within 2 years, you're at it again. So for a person who wasn't writing books, suddenly you're in the book writing business. So.
Well, listen, I can't tell you how surprised I was because it came out. I had I thought, well, thank God I wrote this book. I'll never have to do that again. This is honestly what I thought in 2017, because it was hard for me. It was hard. for many of the reasons that we've already talked about. But after that was out, Kathy called me and she said, I have an idea for a book and I would love to have you as a co-author. And I will tell you that I love Kathy, I admire her, but I thought, I don't think I want to do this. And then I realized what an idiot I am. She is a book guru and she wants me to co-author the book. I'm in. So I committed to it. And we had a fantastic time writing it. We had planned out what each of us covered our own expertise in the book, and it's turned out to be a pretty good book. A lot of people have liked it, and I'm very proud of it.
And that's the speaker author, sell more books and book more speeches.
Yes.
It's such a great Venn diagram of both of your expertise and the audience that you both have, but you come at it from such different places, right? Like your focus and her focus complement each other. And I think when you're looking for a co-author, that's really good. I feel like she also had the expertise in the world of publishing. So you
Yes.
had one book under your belt, so you had some idea of what you were getting yourself into. She clearly knew what she was doing as a book writing coach. So I feel like it's like a lottery to hit to have that combination.
It was
For your book.
a really great experience, and I think I was just very fortunate and felt very blessed that she asked me to do it with her. She had written many books before this, so she was a veteran and was helpful to me in the process of even co-authoring. But she had a plan going in. She's the one who had the plan going in, so it made it a little bit easier for me.
Now, how did having the first book and then subsequently a second book affect your business? Since you already had all that expertise, you were well known. I mean, you by that point had 20 years in the business. So, how did this change things? Did you open any doors, new opportunities? Reinforce your message? Like, why was a book important after all that?
Well, interesting. This book what came out, I got my first shipment, my first box of books while I was at the NSA convention I think it was in Orlando.
Wow.
And I literally had a case shipped to me, and I started handing them out like hotcakes at the convention. I have a new book. I hope you like it. And people took it, and I actually got business when people read the book. They wanted to work with me on specific areas of their business. And Robbie, I told you about my book launch. That was a book launch of sorts in Orlando. The other book launch I did was having them drop ship to my house, opening the front door and yelling to the neighborhood, my new book is out. People did not beat a path to my door, as shocking as that can be. So I didn't really come with a plan, but I spread the word everywhere. I asked people to talk about it. It started becoming adopted by speaker academies for NSA chapters around the country, and then Canada started adopting it. And so it picked up some fire that way. But it absolutely helped people become more familiar with me, familiar with my book. My books come with a decided point of view on this business. I've been doing it for quite a while. I can be a bit of a contrarian. So I always say, if you like my book, you'll love working with me. And it also, I always suggest to people, if you're thinking about working with me, read my book, spend $20, read my book. You'll get a lot of great foundational information, and it may give you some insight into what you particularly want to work with me on for your business.
I agree. I think that having a book makes prospects more educated and
Yes.
informed about the problem that you actually solve, which is a problem that they had not actually been aware of. So it moves them from that little p problem, the problem they know they have and they're willing to admit, to the bigger problem, the bigger solution that you're selling, and then you being that guide, expert, authority who can guide them through that solution. So the book does so much of the work before you even get on that first call. And I can tell
It
which of
does.
my prospects have read one of my books and which haven't. Um, because the first 30 minutes, like that first call,
Yes.
if they've read something of mine, we're diving deep into their issue. If not, I have to kind of go through those first fundamentals with them
Well,
over
I
and
think
over again.
this is a great point, because I tell my clients, I think you'll save money by reading my book and working with me,
Mhm.
instead of just hearing it and digesting it for the first time, like you and I are doing right here. If you read it and you start really thinking with some depth about those areas of your business that you need to concentrate on, you'll get the most out of working with me, and we'll both be happy. We'll both be happy.
So you and I vaguely knew each other. I feel like in the middle of the pandemic, you were the kind of person who kept showing up for various Zoom calls. I kept showing up or hosting those kinds of calls. So, we were kind of orbiting each other. Now, I
Yes.
had already known of you, because you are a big part of the National Speakers Association experience. And so I knew of you, but we hadn't actually really had a lot of a conversation. But you became familiar with my name, and a little bit with me. And so you decided to move forward with a second edition. So I wanted to talk about first why, because that's a lot of work. And as I said to you before we went on air, there is no guarantee your second edition is going to do anything for your
Yes.
business. Most authors, I don't think, do enough to launch the second version. And most people who are hearing about it are like, ho hum, don't I already know that? Like, I already bought your book, or I didn't need it then. I still don't think I need it. Like, it just doesn't change anything. But you had a decidedly different point of view about how this book was going to happen and why it was important. So between 2017 and last year, 2024, when the book became a reality, a lot changed. So tell us
Yes.
why you decided the new edition needed to be done.
Well, because a lot changed. But I'll tell you what I think the key moment in making me absolutely commit to this was, um, two speakers were speaking at an event here in town. And they said, while we're there, we'd love to take you to breakfast. Well, I love a free breakfast. So I said, sure. So we went, and they were both really dear friends of mine, Frank Kitchen and Joe Fingerhut, two very talented speakers. And they both were very complimentary about my book. We love your book. We recommend it to everyone. And, I got in my car and I was driving home, and I said, how nice they love it. And they were speaking, I think, to a college group here in town. And I realized, Robbie, that book doesn't have the word virtual in it. And as you said, the worm had turned big time, in the world as well as in our business. And that's when I really thought I absolutely must write something, update things. And then AI just absolutely got me really going on it. Because we've just had so many big fundamental things, foundational things change, I think, in the speaking and consulting business. That's what really made me decide I absolutely need to do a second edition.
I mean, those are really substantive additions. And in the process of writing my latest book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue, I dove into sort of what makes something a second edition or a subsequent edition. And one factor is 10% of the content has changed. And from what you just described, that mark clearly got
Yes,
met, more than
absolutely. Yeah.
met. So at that point, it really is something new. It's not a tweak. Um, and now you need to know people need to know about it. So when did you realize that you need to do something different? Because you said your first book, you didn't do a lot. I mean, you did bring it to a conference and hand it out, so that did help you. You had the right audience. Your second book, Kathy had a plan, so you probably were kind of like, whatever she wants to do, I'll go along with it.
Yes.
But this was now back to you.
Right.
What made you realize you had to do something different than what you'd done the first time?
Well, and I hate the whole idea of personal responsibility, Robbie. I mean, come on, what a drag. I'm responsible for this. I wanted to get the word out that I had some new stuff to offer, particularly on virtual AI and also licensing videos content. I say now, anytime you walk in to give a speech, you may be walking into a recording studio. So you must be prepared to protect your intellectual property and value that intellectual property and get what you should for that value. And so I wanted to really get out the new content side of this. And that's when I realized I ought to think about doing something beyond opening the front door and yelling to my neighbors, which didn't work so well. And that's when you and I came together on this. And I had talked with a number of people, as I told you, I did, and I was going to do about a book launch. And we had a philosophical agreement on what a launch should be, which was really important to me. And I wanted a process, and I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And at first, I was thinking, do I really want to do this? But boy, it was the best thing I did. It made all of my hard work really feel like it paid off. That was a biggie for me because I had some instant success with it. And there is nothing more gratifying than seeing people embrace a project that you've worked so hard on right away. That was my experience at really doing a more formal, or not a more formal, a formal book launch.
Yeah. And I get to give you kudos here because when I work with a client, I tell them the goal is to get 50 or more Amazon reviews
Yes.
by building a launch team filled with their likely prospects and referral partners, which those conversations with those launch team members leads to new revenue and new media opportunities. And drum roll, please. You have 155 total ratings and 148 written reviews as of this recording. It's been what, 6 months, 8 months?
Yes.
Like, I mean, it's been less than a year since your book came out. Most of those, 130 or so of those, came within a month. Within a month of your book being out in the world, you had 130 reviews. You remarked to me in another conversation that your first book had 130 over the first 7 years, and that was total ratings, not even written reviews.
That's right.
So, what are some of the other things that transpired? Because, like you said, there was some instant success. So, what are some of the ways those conversations led to new opportunities?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that people were ready to embrace these different things and wanting to really be able to master some of these things that are going on. Not that you can master AI or licensing or virtual from my book as such, but my book is all about the business of speaking and how strategically you need to use these things to grow your bottom line in your business. And I think people were really open to all three of those things when this book came out. So I think the timing happened to be good for it. But also, I talked about it more. I've been on more podcasts. I'm traveling to more chapters than ever, and I think my book has had a lot to do with it. A lot of the speaker academies are buying it for their people who have enrolled in that, and that's created some interest in maybe bringing me in. But it's everyone needs to be reminded of the fundamentals as well. And I think my book does remind you of the fundamentals that you need to have and you need to keep in mind in order to make sure you are running a profitable business. But also, I think it helps you to future. How can I repurpose some of the things that I'm doing for a revenue stream, to create more revenue streams? And what should I be considering in the future? And what doors will AI open to me as far as my business, my speaking, but also the products and what I can create? It's such a fascinating time to be in an intellectual property business. There has never been a more fun time, I think, and to consider the possibilities. I just think it's fascinating.
I want to go back to the moment you and I had a conversation about this, because there's some pieces of this that stand out to me as being really memorable. Again, I had a preconceived notion of who you were before we had that conversation. You had already done some homework and met with other people.
Yep.
I'm still kind of curious what those other people said because I'm still trying to figure out where I fit in the landscape. But you were pretty clear about what you wanted to achieve. And like you said, we had a philosophical agreement on how you wanted or at least the outcomes of what you wanted from your
Yes.
launch.
Yes,
And you said yes, like on the call. And I
I
was like,
did.
well, do you want to take a minute?
I
Like,
I remember you were almost like, "Well, let's not have buyer's remorse creep in the back door here. Take your time." And I had already put a lot of thought into this.
right, which made you the ideal prospect, right? Because you had done your homework. You weren't just kind of coming to kick the tires and be like, what's this thing about? You were
Yes.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready to compare and then buy. But part of the process of my launch sequence is, well, I can do a lot for an author. And so you were one of the authors where you and my VA, we work together to manage the back end. But the one piece we cannot do for you, and the piece that you had to start with, was building your invite list.
Yes.
And you had some reluctance. So the next time we had a conversation, you
Some
told me about that.
reluctance.
Tell me about that experience, because you watched my videos on my
I
online
did.
program. You heard the expectation of what kind of numbers you were going to pull together. What was going through your head when you were faced with
Well,
this task?
I was kind of overwhelmed. You had talked about creating this list that we were going to begin with and work with. The thing I liked about working with you, Robbie, was that you have a process. It's spelled out. I could see the whole process through. That is something that most people who do a book launch don't have. I could literally see the roadmap, the blueprint for this. And I liked each part of that roadmap. I like each stop along the way. But you had challenged me to come up with 600 people who would.
This is really
Who,
funny because I didn't.
oh,
This is
you
the part
didn't.
that's so funny. Okay, so just for those who are listening, I've always wanted to talk to you about this. We're
It
going to do it
looks
on
like
air.
we are.
Okay. So just for folks who are listening, if you want to get 50 people to write a review for you by some
Oh,
date in the future, you need 150 people
yeah,
signed up a month before your book is published, which
yeah,
means you probably have to ask about 200. So my minimum request is that
yeah.
an author will pull together a list of 200. Now, in the videos that I shared in the online program, there is a video that explains that. There's another video that explains that for my third book, I built a launch team of over 600 people because I had the goal of 200 reviews. That stuck out to you.
It did.
And you went from, I don't know, do I know 200 people to, oh my gosh, Robbie wants me to get a list of 600.
You're absolutely right. And I remember thinking, do I even know 600 people? That was my first thought. I don't even know 600 people. But this, as you know, I obsessed on this. I looked at I have a listserv of names that I have built up for over 20 years, people who follow me on different platforms on social. And so I wanted to look for people that I really thought had a great possibility of wanting to join in and be a partner with me on this, clients, as well as people who really support my business. And so I started doing this and I just couldn't believe it. I kept adding names. I mean, I had an Excel spreadsheet open all the time on my computer. And I would constantly think of someone else that maybe wasn't on the list. And then I'd think, and this was helpful too, I would tell anyone who's going through this process, make sure that when you're making this list, these people actually are getting like your blogs and stuff, because I would think of names, they weren't even on that list until I collapsed my lists and found out. So it was a great marketing tool for me, this exercise. But I came up with over 600 names.
So I think the final count was 543 the
Was it?
day that you and I met. You added more after, but you got on the call. Before you told me that, you told me the story about the angstiness that you'd had about
Yes.
doing it.
Yeah.
And then you were kind of like, well, guess how many I have? Guess how many I have? And I was like, I don't know. And you were like, 543. And I was like, awesome. I am not surprised at all. And you were like, I'm surprised.
I was shocked. I just, because this is not just people who want to receive a blog post from you,
Right.
a very passive thing. I am asking them to partner with me.
Yeah. And 398, I believe, is the number that signed up initially for your launch team.
Yeah.
So
I was amazed.
those numbers,
I'm still amazed.
those numbers kind of hold true. So if you kind of take the number 200 and make it 600, and then you look at, well, 200
Yes.
becomes 150, well, 600 becomes 400. Like that's just,
Yeah.
percentages. And then when you have 400, you're gonna a third of that. A third of that is 130 some odd, and that's how many were signed up with the review on Amazon in the time frame we asked. And I said more will trickle in, and here you are closing in on 150 written reviews. And that's how it should work. Reviews should keep coming in because there's 4 things that matter on Amazon's discoverability. This what I mean is when someone types in a keyword related to your book, where does your book show up on the book's the search page on Amazon? Is your book even on the first page? And so it's quantity of reviews, it's the quality, not just that they're 5-star, but also that they're substantive. And that's the thing about your reviews. If people went and looked at that book for your second edition, these are not 3 sentences. They could be. They don't have to be more than 2 or 3 sentences.
I'm
But
blown
a lot
away.
of them are
Blown away.
amazing. They're like really into what you're doing and calling out examples. So that's the second thing is the quality. The third thing is recency. So having reviews trickle in throughout the year over
Yes.
and over again, not just in that first month, but ongoing. And you've done a good job of keeping that going. And then verified reviews, which the big push for verified reviews is during the launch. How many people can you get to buy your book, which we discounted to 99 cents for Kindle, in order
Yes.
to leave a review, knowing that now at this point, most people leaving reviews for you at this point are getting the book from you as part of a course they're in or because they're in your audience. Like they're not necessarily buying the book themselves. They received it, thought, this is a great book, I'll write a review, because they see how many people did. So reviews also beget reviews. So those are the 4 things that matter. And now I feel like because you're in a competitive space, right? There's a lot of people writing
Yes.
about your topic.
Yes.
Your book's going to be on that first page for people writing keywords into Amazon.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that this process for the second edition um, helped me to do, and that was be more intentional about asking people for reviews. Anytime anybody says, I bought your book and I loved it, um, I always say, if you feel so moved, I would really cherish an Amazon review if you like what you read. So I am really asking, and I never did that. I probably asked for a handful of reviews on my first edition of this book. So I'm more intentional about it. I'm not pushy about it at all. But I'm more intentional about asking about it. People are genuinely great. I mean, I
Yeah.
find people to be very generous. And so I've had luck just asking when my book comes up, mentioning it. I was just I just saw you recently in Philadelphia. I had the honor of being invited to present at NSA Philly, and I sold a bunch of books there. And every time I sold a book, I said, if you like it and you like the content, I would really be honored by an Amazon review.
Yeah, I want to talk about this for a second because the National Speakers Association membership has this sort of unsaid policy that we don't pitch to each other. Maybe it is a said policy. I don't know. But like it's just gauche. It's just not the thing. We don't walk around. I mean, there are a few, and then those people get called out.
Yes, they do.
There
Yes.
are the people who are kind of like preying on the people that are new. Like they're like, oh, are you new? Let me sell you something. And we're all like, oh, be careful of the people, So
Yeah. Yeah.
you and I, we serve this audience. Like this is our audience, but neither of us wants to be seen that way. What I love is that this launch process gave you a reason to invite your admirers, supporters, champions to get involved. And then if they were part of a chapter of an association somewhere in the world, not just here in the US, not just in Canada, wherever, they then could bring the book back. And then the book might be considered to be used for the Speakers Academy that's
Yes.
running, or to invite you to come speak, or some other collaboration. Or maybe they want to have you donate something to their auction, which I'm sure you were asked to do that, maybe on the spot by me. Uh, so that kind, I mean, but you basically activated a street team of enthusiasts. It wasn't everyone. Like 400 people did not do that, but a percentage of those 400 became those advocates, and that's why you are flying all around, which is incredible that you're going to all these different chapters and doing these presentations. And I want to also give you kudos for your slide deck. It's the best slide deck I've ever seen.
Thank you so much. Um, I have to say the idea I took from a terrific program at an influence meeting a year ago at a conference, and I'm going to not remember her name. Sonia. Oh, please. Uh, I copied it from her slide deck. I loved the way she just planted keywords on a
Yeah.
slide and talked about them.
I'm
And
joking here because most people overdo their slides of
yes,
either way too
agreed.
much text or too much visuals or it's distracting. You were in person and your slide told you what topic we were discussing.
Yes,
And
yes,
you forwarded to the next slide and it was a big word, colorful background. Now we're talking about this. And it was just like it was the nice blend. I honestly, here's what I like about it. I don't love trying to use slides. I've learned to use them better because I'm doing a lot of virtual programs where that seems to be how people are learning. But sometimes they're too much and people hide behind their slides. And in person, you don't know where to look. Am I reading this thing? Am I listening to the person? Am I watching their hand gesture?
yeah.
I just want a roadmap. I just want to know where we are, and I want to be reminded. And as a speaker, I want to be kept on a plan.
Well, listen,
um,
I remember years ago sitting in PowerPoints, and the speaker would practically say, not actually, practically say, all right, I'm going to give you 3 to 4 minutes to read this slide, and then we'll talk about it.
yeah. Or
Um,
when they turn their back to the audience and they read the slide.
yes, yes,
I
yeah,
had that professor. No, I mean, another thing I think that you and I could relate on is that we also have to demonstrate the best practice that we're teaching. So I'm teaching people how to do better, let's say virtual programs, right? I want to show them how to create these like highly engaging, interactive, fun virtual events,
and you do
but
that.
I'm teaching them how to use Zoom, which is super dry. It could be done in a like, okay, now click here, okay, now click
Yes,
here. And
yes.
I was like, oh, this is the challenge. Like I have to, and similarly, like you're teaching people about becoming a better speaker and selling their services, but you have to also be a good speaker as you sell your services.
Well, I think that we want to model.
We want to model.
It's a lot like parenting. Both we know a little bit about that. I've always said the best way to teach my child is by modeling the kind of behavior I want to see her
Yeah.
manifest for the rest of her life.
Speaking of which, I want to know about a marketing effort that you've tried somewhere in your work that did not work, that was not worth it, that you would not recommend to other authors. Like, was there something you put out into the world and you were like, great, I'm going to do this big thing and it'll be a huge campaign. It'll be amazing. And then it fell flat. Like, what would you tell people?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I obsess about these things before I roll them out, or I do my homework before I roll them out.
That's key.
I don't have an answer for you right away.
That's key. That's actually a good sign in some ways that you are very, very thoughtful and strategic about your process. So much of this work, I find, is people throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I think little experiments are worthwhile, but to invest heavily in something and have it backfire or fall flat, it's like, oh, so various things like that. But it sounds like your best marketing effort has been to hook up with associations that attract your ideal client.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so that's something that I think no matter what book people are writing, if they're looking to speak, having a clear sense before the book's even written of who those audiences are physically, like
Agree.
literal lists of these associations and the chapters they have around the world. And then before even the book comes out, being a great partner to those organizations, donating to their auctions, supporting them, writing content for their blogs or
Yes.
their newsletters, like just being engaged, because you are surprised that people stepped up and were so amazing to you, but you are a person who's already demonstrated that to others. So it's a
Well,
lot
thank you.
easier to want to be reciprocal, even if it's not direct, even if they don't of you as the kind of person who helps. Even if they haven't received help, they're going to want to help you. So you laid the groundwork for an incredible launch. And it's well before you even wrote a book. It was when you were giving away all those lists on those checklists and to-dos for
Maybe.
people.
Yep.
I think it starts back then. Any closing thoughts about a piece of advice that you'd give somebody who's writing a book to help them grow their business, speaking, coaching, or consulting?
Well, do my second version of launch instead of my first. That would be probably a big thing. I think a lot of people are going to be well served by your book. They could certainly be well served by your services, Robbie. I was, and I think that something that we touched on a few minutes ago is really key. If you're in an intellectual property business, you have to give away value to attract people. And that has always served me well. I get asked a lot, geez, you write a lot about what you consult about. You talk about this. Aren't you afraid people aren't going to hire you? And I've always said, no, it's because I do that they hire me. That's why people are hiring me, because their sense is if they're having a challenge in their business, if they thought I had something good to say when they heard me or read my book, I think that they'll be knocking on my door. So being available, presenting to, and being a resource for my target market has been my guiding light. That's my North Star. And it has been since I started my business. And that is something that I have not changed. It's just worked really well for me.
It's such a necessary reminder because I feel like people sometimes are so scarcity minded about their
Yes,
content.
I do too.
And they put it up behind even an email. Honestly, I always have some content that is not behind an email. Just like here's a PDF. Here it is. And then some content, yeah, it's an opt-in because there's more to it. And then there are times where I'll get on a call with groups of people or a one-on-one call. Like you want to have various ways people can access your content because then they get who you are. I mean, they know how you think about this, and that's what differentiates you from all the other people out there. So I love that reminder. And speaking of which, how can people find you and follow your work?
Well, my website is bookmorebusiness.com. The name of my book, Book More Business, Make More Money Speaking. If you go to my website, you can find my email, my phone number. And I always tell people, reach out if there's any way I can help you. It would be my joy to do that. But I just want to thank you for having me today, Robbie. And I want to thank you for the great success I'm seeing in the second edition of this book. I sing your praises. As I said, there were a number of people that had approached me about doing this. And the reason I pulled the trigger right away working with you is because I just loved you had a plan, you had a way to execute it, and I liked the end goal and your philosophical approach to this. I thought had more depth, quite frankly, than a lot of others I talked to. So what a joy to be with you today and talk about this.
Well, thank you for all of that. And I also want to share with everyone listening that Lois is also a partner in the BizBook Pub Hub. So one of the links that I'm going to put into the show notes will be a link to her hub profile. So if you wrote a book and you're trying to figure out how to turn it into a business asset to book more business speaking, well, this is the person you want to talk to. And so if you go to bizbookpubhub.com, you're going to find social links to find Lois. You're going to find her website, her books, the link to the hub profile. We'll put it all there for you. You'll also find all the show notes for all the other episodes we release every Tuesday and Thursday, invitations to come to our free virtual networking events, and a couple of dozen other experts like Lois and I who support entrepreneurs through their author journey from writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing their book. Get all the details, including our newly named Kindle flash sales, which are going to be opportunities a few times a year for authors to lower their book price and cross-promote with other authors that are writing books to grow their businesses. So check it all out at bizbookpubhub.com. Lois, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been fun. I'm laughing more on this show than most.
Well, I love that. And always a joy being with you, friend.